They saw a wrinkled shirt and plain shoes and they had already made up their minds. They whispered, they smirked, they told him, right to his face, that he wasn't the right fit for their culture, that this world wasn't built for someone who looked like him. What they didn't know was that 6 months ago, he had bought the entire building they were sitting in. His name was Alex Branson and he hadn't walked into that interview room looking for a job, he walked in looking for the truth, and the truth? It was worse than he expected. This is the story of a man who grew up with nothing, built everything, and then sat quietly in a chair while people who worked for him told him he wasn't good enough just to see what they would do. And what they did, changed everything. Stay with me because the moment he placed those 3 documents on that table and the room went completely silent, that moment will stay with you for a long time. Welcome to Kindness Arena. If you believe in kindness, second chances and unseen connections that change lives, please help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers. Help me show her that stories like this matter and deserve to be heard by hitting the subscribe button, liking the video, comment your thoughts, where you are watching from, and share it with someone who needs it to stay motivated. Your support keeps these powerful true stories alive. The elevator doors opened on the 14th floor of Branson Mercer Financial Group's downtown headquarters, and a man stepped out wearing a plain white button-down shirt, slightly wrinkled at the sleeves, dark slacks that had seen better days, and a pair of clean but unremarkable black shoes. No cufflinks. No tie. No designer watches catching the light. He carried a slim manila folder under his arm, no leather briefcase, no laptop bag, just a folder, the kind you could buy in a pack of 10 at any corner store. His name was Alex Branson. He was 38 years old, the son of a mechanic from rural Ohio, a man who had eaten peanut butter sandwiches for lunch every day of high school because his family couldn't afford anything else. He had put himself through college on a partial scholarship and 3 part-time jobs. He had slept on a friend's couch for 11 months while building his first company. He had failed twice before succeeding once, and that one success had changed everything. 6 months ago, Alex Branson had quietly acquired a majority stake in Mercer Financial through a series of calculated moves that the financial press was still trying to fully piece together. The board had voted him in as CEO. The announcement had been made internally, but the company was large, sprawling across 4 cities, and not everyone had gotten the memo. Not everyone had thought to look up what their new CEO looked like. Today, he wasn't here as a CEO. He was here as candidate number 7, a scheduled interviewee for the position of Senior Financial Analyst, Floor 14, applying under the name A. Branson with a resume that was deliberately vague and understated. It was a test. A quiet audit of the company's recruitment process, something he had been meaning to do since he reviewed the diversity and retention reports 2 months ago and found numbers that made his jaw tighten. High dropout rates among non-traditional candidates. A pattern of fast rejections in early interview rounds. He wanted to see it for himself. He walked to the reception desk, where a young woman smiled politely and handed him a visitor sticker. Room 4B, down the hall on the left, she said. They'll call you in about 15 minutes. He thanked her and took a seat in the waiting area. Around him sat 4 other candidates, sharp suits, polished shoes, leather folios open on their laps. One man was rehearsing something under his breath. A woman scrolled through notes on her phone. Nobody paid Alex particular attention, except for one brief glance from the man next to him, whose eyes swept from Alex's wrinkled collar down to his plain shoes and then away, the kind of glance that says everything while pretending to say nothing. At exactly 2:15 p.m., a door opened and a broad-shouldered man in his mid-50s filled the frame. This was Director of Talent Acquisition, Richard Holloway, a man who had been with Mercer Financial for 19 years and who wore his authority the way some men wear cologne, heavily and in every room he entered. Behind him, barely visible, sat Patricia Vance, Head of Department Operations, and Greg Moss, Senior HR Partner. Candidate 7, Holloway called out, looking at his clipboard. Alex stood and walked in. Holloway's eyes moved over him the way a butcher looks at a thin cut of meat assessingly, and without much enthusiasm. He gestured to the chair across the wide table without offering a handshake. Take a seat. Alex Saturday. He placed his folder on the table with both hands and smiled pleasantly. Patricia Vance leaned toward Greg Moss and whispered something. Greg Moss covered his mouth with his pen. It wasn't subtle. Holloway flipped a page. So, A. Branson. He said the name flatly, like he was reading an item off a grocery list. No firm name on your current employment. Just an independent consultant. He drew out the last 2 words with a faint smile that had nothing warm in it. That's a creative way of saying between jobs. A quiet moment. I've been selective about where I direct my attention, Alex said simply. Holloway glanced at Patricia. She made a small, almost imperceptible expression, the kind that people make when they've already decided something. Your suit, Greg Moss started, then stopped himself, then continued anyway. I mean, we do have a dress code expectation for senior analyst roles. Just so you're aware for future interviews. I appreciate that, Alex said. Where did you study? Patricia asked. Ohio State. Undergrad in finance. I did some additional coursework at Wharton later on. Some additional coursework, Holloway echoed, smiling at his notepad. Not a full program. No. I was running a company at the time. It was hard to commit to a full schedule. Another exchange of glances around the table. What company? Patricia asked, almost as a formality. A financial technology firm. We scaled it over 5 years and eventually merged with a larger entity. Can we verify that? Greg asked. You can, Alex said pleasantly. Holloway set his pen down and folded his hands in a way that signaled the conversation was winding toward its predetermined conclusion. Look, Mr. Branson, I'll be straight with you, because I think that's more respectful than wasting your time. This is a senior role. It requires a certain presentation. A certain pedigree. The clients we serve, the partners we engage, they make judgments. First impressions matter enormously in this industry. He paused. I'm not sure this environment is the right fit for your profile. The room was quiet. I see, said Alex. It's nothing personal, Patricia added quickly. We just have a very specific culture here. Alex nodded slowly. He looked at each of them in turn, Holloway, Patricia, Greg, with an expression that was neither angry nor wounded. It was something more patient than that. Something that knew something they didn't. He reached into his folder. He placed 3 documents on the table, side by side, with the careful deliberateness of a man who has done this before, not to humiliate, but to illuminate. The first was a copy of the board resolution from 6 months ago. The second was a shareholder certificate. The third was a printed email chain between himself and Mercer's previous CEO, finalizing the acquisition terms. He turned them around so the panel could read them clearly. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Patricia Vance picked up the board resolution first. Her face changed the way the sky changes before a storm, gradually, then all at once. Greg Moss put his pen down very slowly, as if setting it down quietly might undo the last 20 minutes. Holloway stared at the shareholder certificate, then looked up at Alex, then back at the document, as though reading it a second time might produce a different result. I'm the CEO, Alex said, in the same calm, unhurried tone he'd used to say everything else. I acquired majority shares in this company 6 months ago. I'm here today because our retention data for non-traditional candidates raised some concerns that I wanted to investigate personally. He paused. I think I have enough information now. Holloway opened his mouth and closed it. Mr. Branson, sir, Patricia began. You don't have to explain, Alex said, holding up one hand gently. That's not why I'm telling you. I'm telling you because you deserve the truth, and because what happens next is going to require honesty from all of us. He stood, collected his documents, and tucked them back into his folder. I'll be scheduling a full review of the talent acquisition process starting next Monday. I'd like all 3 of you present. Not to be disciplined. I want to be clear about that, but to be part of building something better. He looked at Holloway for a moment longer than the others. 19 years is a long time to be with a company. That kind of experience is valuable. I'd like to keep it pointed in the right direction. Holloway nodded. It was a small nod, but it was genuine. Alex picked up his folder, buttoned the single button of his plain jacket, and walked toward the door. He paused at the frame and looked back one last time, not with triumph, not with anger, but with the quiet, grounded dignity of a man who had never needed a suit to tell him who he was. The receptionist downstairs, he said. The young woman who checked me in. She offered me a glass of water without being asked and smiled like she meant it. A brief pause. Give her a commendation. That's your company culture. Everything else is just noise. And then he was gone, back down the corridor, back into the elevator, back to the world that had always underestimated him and had always, eventually, understood its mistake. The review began the following Monday. By the end of the quarter, the dropout rate among non-traditional candidates had dropped by 43%. Richard Holloway led the redesign of the interview framework himself. He never forgot the man in the wrinkled shirt, and he never again confused a person's appearance with their worth. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness is never wasted and that even a broken path can lead to beautiful places and change of lives, Please like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Kindness Arena because your support keeps stories like this alive and spreading. Tell us in the comment what you would have done differently if you were the millionaire. Would you have sacked the executives? Or has a stranger's kindness ever changed your life in ways you didn't expect? Would love to hear your story.